Hello, my wonderful manifesting friends and beautiful souls. It's Greg Kuhn, and welcome to another episode of Manifest the Big Stuff. Today, I am super excited. I want to welcome you to a fantastic episode of Manifest the Big Stuff. You know, we love to talk about the big stuff: health, wealth, relationships, our love life, those really important things, and how to manifest them more like we truly want, how to be more influential architects of our life. And today, I have a guest who has done this at such a level, you're going to be astounded. You're going to want to hear from this gentleman. I want to introduce you to Howard Brown, my guest today. Howard is a Silicon Valley entrepreneur. He is the best-selling author of Shining Brightly. He is an award-winning international speaker, an inspirational podcaster. He's a survivorship coach, a health technology consultant, and a two-time stage 4 cancer patient and survivor, 30 years apart. Howard shares the keys to leading a resilient life, as you can imagine, with hope that drives successful community leadership, which he's demonstrated, business innovation and innovators, of which he's one, and healthcare advocates, which Howard now is doing in earnest. Be prepared to be inspired. Be prepared to meet a miracle man, a man who has already lived 3 lives. Howard, please say hello.
Greg, thank you for having me on. What a grand introduction. I'm humbled by that because I just try to be me each day and wake up. But I am honored to be on your show and to share my story and some wisdom and learn a little bit and share a little bit with you today. So thank you.
Well, Howard, my viewers, my listeners are wonderful souls who are very interested, just as I am, and I know just as you are, in making the most of this gift that we've been given, taking advantage of the opportunities that we're being afforded in each moment to make the most of our life. And of course, the perspective that you are bringing to the table is that you have manifested a life where you have survived beyond all odds. Let's start with Howard Brown at age 23 and learning that you have stage 4 non-Hodgkins lymphoma and being told, Howard, you shouldn't expect to survive. What, as a 57-year-old looking back on it, how did you survive?
So, God, I thought I graduated Babson College, the #1 school for entrepreneurship, and I started my career. And like any young person, I thought it was kind of like a superhero, right? Invincible. And I got to my career. I got promoted, and I'm driving down the Pennsylvania Turnpike to Dayton, Ohio, for a promotion at age 23. So exciting. I had the world as my oyster, and I noticed that I actually had a little red bump on my left cheekbone. And I got out of the car to get gas, and this is 1989 in like August, and I used a payphone. Remember those? I called my mom and dad to check in, and I said, I noticed a little bump because I keep looking in the rearview mirror and I see a little red bump there. And it's probably nothing, So my mom's like, well, keep an eye on it. What are they going to do, right? So I get to Dayton, Ohio, and it keeps getting a little bigger. but I have a temporary housing. I'm looking for an apartment. I find an apartment. I'm going to work. I'm the new guy in Dayton, Ohio, and I'm working. I'm going to the gym. I'm playing basketball, and I'm starting to plan my travel schedule. This is in the disaster recovery world for banks and for retail supermarkets. And the banks actually had to put together a disaster recovery plan. So I'm doing great. My mom comes out because I think you need sheets and dishes and all that stuff for an apartment. So she came out, and this is at the time you could actually meet someone at the gate at the airport. You didn't have to wait behind security. So she sees me, and I'm wearing glasses at the time, and this little red bump. She goes, what is that? We got to get that checked out. I was like, Mom, it's okay. It's nothing. I'm fine. I feel really strong. So she spends a weekend with me, and she spent like a Wednesday night till like a Sunday night. So I worked actually Thursday and Friday. So I'd come home, but she would walk across to this big mall and start buying stuff for the apartment. Clean sheets are good, towels are good. So she did what moms do, and we'd go out to eat at night, and we really didn't know anybody there. And I kept pushing it off. She goes, let's go get that checked out. I was like, nah, it's fine. Fortunately, a couple weeks later, I had to come back to Boston. I grew up in the suburbs of Boston, in Framingham, Massachusetts. And I came in, my speech was on a Monday, and I came in on a Friday night. And Saturday morning, my dad says, let's go play tennis. And instead of playing tennis, he took me to the community hospital. And we waited in the emergency room, and the doctor looked at it, says, it's a cyst. Take some antibiotic, you'll be fine. Great. But it was kind of purpley and getting bigger. So imagine it started, small, and it's now starting to look like a small little marble. And my dad and I didn't go play tennis. We went to breakfast, and I saw some friends on Sunday. What is that thing on your cheek? And I ended up, kind of making excuses. I got hit in basketball, weightlifting. I didn't know what it was, but I felt fine. So I do the speech. The speech is great. And go back and see my parents before I leave. And we go back to the community hospital. And this time they actually say, oh, the medicine doesn't work. I wasn't feeling great either. It might've been the antibiotic. And they took actually a biopsy. And then they said, wait. And then they said they took another biopsy. And then the waiting game started. Well, my parents took me to the airport. I left on my way. And I didn't realize it at the time, but they were freaking out because we didn't know what was going on. And I get a call to come back. This is, I don't know, it could be even like 5 or 6 weeks later. I don't even remember, but it was enough time that maybe 3 weeks later. And I ended up coming back, and I go see this community hospital, and there's 7 doctors waiting for me. 7.
Not a good sign, right?
No, never a good sign. And at the end, they say, you have a 2 p.m. appointment at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute at 2 p.m. Don't be late. Well, I'm in an Armani suit, okay? And I'm ready to, basically fly back out to, continue my life. And it doesn't even really register. Why am I going to Dana-Farber Cancer Institute? I actually tell you, it didn't register with me at all. Maybe it's a form of denial or protection in what I'm doing, right? And so I get there, and I walk into Dana-Farber, and they try to make it light and all that stuff and nice. And there's a waiting room for the adults, which I will call the old people. And there's a waiting room for pediatrics. The Jimmy Fund is for kids with cancer. I didn't have a place for me. I'm 23. Do I go sit with the adults and the older people, or do I go with the kids? Well, I actually sat with the kids. Then they call you in.
You were like an adolescent.
Yeah, well, they call that young onset, but I was still young, but I didn't fit with the older people in their 60s or 70s, right? So what I ended up doing was I ended up going with the kids, and then I get called back after a bunch of tests to this doctor's office that invented chemotherapy for blood cancers. And there was a young doctor behind him. My parents were actually behind me. And he said, Howard, you have stage 4 accelerated T-cell non-Hodgkins lymphoma. It's a blood cancer of the lymphatic system, and we're going to try to pound it out of you. And I didn't hear another word. Wow. Let's just say I was a deer in the headlights. My mom's bawling her eyes out. My dad's a statue. And I look up at this young doctor who was sort of close in age, maybe 7 or 8 years older than me, I guess. He's a fellow. I go, what is he saying? So he was talking doctor, and I didn't know anything. And so we listened, and we went home, and the car ride home was dead silence. We invite my twin sister, that's a really important fact, to dinner. My dad runs out to the library and gets a book on cancer. We knew nothing. We had dinner, we cried a lot, and I was to go back to the hospital for more tests. Little did I know that Dana-Farber was going to be my home away from home. And I probably was still in denial. Now, 1989, no cell phones, no internet, and now computer use was really, just starting. So this is the analog days. So
Yeah,
we
like
had
you said, your dad went to the library.
yeah, went to the library, and we had a landline that was always busy. The busy signal, I mean, people couldn't get through because we wanted to tell people about it, but people would call. The phone was always busy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So roll the clock forward. I start chemotherapy, and when I get there to start chemotherapy, they test your blood, and Dr. Rubin, the young doctor, comes out and says, "There's no chemo today." I said, "Wait, what are you talking about? You told me that, and I looked up, the prognosis for someone with stage 4, lymphoma, which is like leukemia, blood cancer, 6 months to live or less." Right? Anyone I knew that had that, that cancer or knew somebody said, it's a death sentence.
Mm.
So he says, "We're not doing chemo." I go, "Yeah, but you told me I'm going to die. We better do chemo." And he says, "Nope, it's not safe." But I scheduled a field trip, and he scheduled a field trip to the cryogenic center. And I said, "Cryo, what? What is that?" And he said, "It's the sperm bank. You're going to leave a sample." I go, "Why should I do that?" He goes, "Just do it. What else are you going to do today? It might actually feel good. You'll come back tomorrow. We'll check your blood, and you'll do chemo the next day." So I went to the cryogenic center, and I left a sample, and I sort of forgot about it because I had other things that were more pressing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
did chemotherapy. And the chemotherapy I was doing was extremely toxic. I lost my hair within 10 days.
Mm.
And it was very harsh side effects. I was on steroids. My whole world changed. And the one thing that my mom learned is that my immune system, I was very susceptible. So I actually suffered, from masks and gloves, and anyone that would come over and visit actually had to kind of wear a mask and gloves because they could get me sick, and that could kill me faster, any type of virus, bacteria, fungus. So my mom was basically, in charge of the cleaning patrol. And so having guests was a luxury. And we spent a lot of time. We commuted to Dana-Farber basically daily. And I had some overnight stays when I needed it. And the chemotherapy was harsh. I went to my 5th-year reunion. Okay, I'm 23 and a half years old. And I walk in there, I'm bald. I'm wearing gloves. I took my mask off. My mom would put that mask back on. She knew my friends, and I was the vice president of my high school class. I was all state in basketball, right? And so they knew me, and I delivered some opening remarks for people to pray. But this is the first time that many of these people had had touch with cancer. Maybe they had an aunt or uncle or grandparent, but no one their age had had cancer. And so I heard the guys, "Poor bastard, dead man walking," and again, they didn't mean anything by it. They just, how do you deal with this as a healthy 23-year-old? But I look like I had cancer now because I was bald. Well, none of the treatments were working. Mm-hmm. I was getting sick. I was starting on blood transfusions, platelet transfusions. I went down to Florida to visit my grandparents to get some warm weather. I immediately got rushed back home because I actually looked like a spotted, purple spots all over. And this, basically big red mark on my cheekbone turned out to be the size of a golf ball. I mean, thank God it came out, because if it didn't came out, I would have died. It was the warning sign. Now, we didn't have any good news. The therapies were not working. They tested my sister for bone marrow transplant. It's now called a stem cell transplant. She was an exact match. Okay, that's a 1 in 25,000 chance. Wow. Okay, and people now still swab their cheeks and they become a match to donate their bone marrow and stem cells. And that was the only good news we had. I had a brutal winter there because I was failing all their therapies. And I was in the hospital a lot because my immune system was so fragile. And I didn't know. I didn't know I was going to live. So they got me ready for a bone marrow transplant. On May 17th, I went in and they hit me up with such toxic chemo and full body radiation that they eliminated my bone marrow. And this is the protocol in 1990. They're following the orders. Okay. I
It's
wasn't the
not like
first.
that anymore.
They've changed the protocol substantially, but they put you in an isolation room.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Think John Travolta and the Boy in the Bubble movie with no immune system, right? I did not have an immune system. So when people came in, they had to scrub, put on masking gown. All I could see was their eyes. And they did that every single time they came in or out. And my mom would sit with me or my dad would sit with me in the evenings. And I had my own prison. I was in prison.
It had to be terrifying.
It was. It was terrifying. So, how much TV can you watch? I mean, I didn't feel great anyways, right? What do you talk about? Well, you talk about memories. You talk about the good times, right? Because you don't have really that crystal ball knowing what's going on. And while they're prepping you for bone marrow transplant, you sign a document that said it could kill you right away. When you take someone else's organ or blood system and put it, infuse it in you, it could kill you right away. I mean, your body will reject it. You will die quickly.
Mm-hmm.
You could die over time, or it can give you very significant side effects called graft versus host disease, where the body's sort of figuring out what this is and is rejecting it, and there's some significant side effects to that.
You're willing to do this because you want to live.
Yes. And also I had no other choice. The therapies that they sent 4 therapies at me that didn't work. The cancer was growing. Every scan you would do, that the cancer was growing. I'd light up like a Christmas tree on the gallium scans. So this was a Hail Mary. And again, in the analog world, the information getting out and coming in was slow. It was really slow. Now, because my mom and I were showing up at the cancer center a lot, we became to get to know our environment. People would know us. My mom and I are very outgoing. She's talking to everybody, getting to know the staff. And the way that she works is that she endears herself because she's a candyholic. My mom loves candy. Now, at the cancer center, even though sugar is not good for cancer, it makes people happy. So they had candy all over the place. Tootsie Rolls, M&M, any lollipops. And kids like candy, right? So right. One day we show up and there's no candy. My mom is devastated. So one of the staff people there, Carol, says, yeah, we're out of candy. We don't have any more in my little supply closet. Huh. Oh my God. My mom, who's a force of nature, called 10 candy companies and had pounds and pounds of candy delivered for years. Years.
Yeah.
Because candy was the way of her sharing her light and goodness. It was kind of cool to watch.
She was making that her space. I mean, she was making herself a part of things, right?
Exactly. So we got to know a lot of people there.
You're so fortunate that you had advocates and allies like that.
Well, I moved back home with mom and dad. I didn't make it back to Dayton, Ohio to my apartment. I moved back home. Eventually my dad went out there with some friends out there and put it all in storage and drove my car back home. Yeah. So we lived there. We made it our place. Okay. But you meet people there going through the struggle. Mm-hmm. So some people were dying. Some people were getting worse. A few people were healing. And I mentored a young kid with leukemia. Unfortunately, he passed. And I got to this bone marrow transplant, and I did get to speak to some other people that had gone through it, right? And it was just terrifying. It was really frightening. My whole world had changed, right? I was a patient. I was a sick young man. And that's how people saw me.
Your identity was changing.
Correct. It changed. And so my sister gives me the bone marrow. She donates it. It's basically injections out of her hip bones that morning at a different hospital. And I had gone through all the radiation, which was very difficult. Mm-hmm. And they bring in a purple bag with her bone marrow at 5:00 that evening. And I got like a lot of people in the room. They're waiting to see if this thing kills me because they don't know. Mm-hmm. They hang the bag. They inject it in me. I think they gave me some Demerol. I don't know why, but they're watching. and waiting to see if my body rejects it. So slowly but surely, after a couple hours, people are leaving the room. And eventually it's just me and my mom in the room. My dad came across and wheeled my sister because she was in a different hospital connected. And she came to the window and she waved. And I just said, I love you. Thank you for trying to save my life. It was a beautiful moment in a terrifying time.
Yeah.
And the bag is empty and it's sitting there. And I looked at my mom and I said, take that bag and put it in your purse. And she said, what are you talking about? I said, take that bag and put it in your purse. This right here is my bone marrow bag. This is my bag of life. This bag of my sister's stem cells saved my life.
Bag of love.
Bag of love too. Exactly. So this bag saved my life. And so rolling the clock forward, because it's a long story and it's in my book, is that I did a clinical trial to strengthen my immune system, my natural killer cells. And after 6 months of that, they basically say you're on your own. You're on surveillance, quarterly surveillance. You need to get gallium scans and blood tests. They don't tell you what to do. So survivorship is a whole new adventure, a whole new journey. And what do you do? So I moved to Florida to get myself, I'm 135 pounds and bald. I needed to repair myself emotionally, physically. Now, financially, I was good. I was still on disability, getting paid. And I just didn't get to see a lot of people because I didn't have an immune system. So I wasn't around people a lot. But I moved to Florida. My friend, David Herman, was getting divorced. He lived on a golf course near Tampa. And 2 of my high school friends came down to babysit me. My parents thought I needed babysitting, and I probably did. And I started to golf. I started to play basketball. The Super Bowl was in Tampa. We started to, go to the amusement parks. Started to live life a little bit. I needed to get stronger because I was really scrawny and my stamina was weak. And I did that. And while I was there, I typed a letter. This is typewriter time to go on the company award trip that I missed to Acapulco. And I typed a letter to the CEO of the company, and I got a typed letter back that said, you can come if you get a doctor's letter. And I got a doctor's letter that I was healthy enough to travel. And the trip was in Hawaii, and the big island of Hawaii that just got devastated. And I went on that trip, and I got to experience some joy. But at that trip to Hawaii, I had lunch with the CEO and the president of NCR Corporation, and they said, are you going to come back to work? We have a job for you. And I said, I want a job in warm weather. I want to leave New England for a couple of reasons. One, I have to tell you, my parents were the best caregivers in the world. They were hovering like bears would on their cubs.
They were so enmeshed in your life, by nature, right? I mean, and you needed them to do that, but I understand now it was time to.
Yeah.
But
they gave up their entire lives, except for my dad working. They basically gave up everything to basically look out for my care and well-being.
Mm-hmm.
And I also needed to break that. I needed to give them their life back, and I needed to get my life back. Right. So I took a job in California where I could have warm weather. And I took an apartment near the beach, and so I could play basketball selfishly. And I had to work on myself. And so I call that Humpty Dumpty version 1, putting myself back together again, emotionally, physically, in my career, and also in community.
Right.
And so it takes time. It takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. Everybody's a ball of clay. I was working on myself, which is healthy to do. And
you went to a precipice that it's unimaginable, really. And now you're back a human being, and everybody's going around doing their thing and living their life, and life is moving just as fast as it ever did, and you're getting acclimated or reacclimated. But you certainly did that. You did wind up making the world your oyster, like you originally described before that tremendous experience with the lymphoma, and you became a Silicon Valley superstar. You brought companies to market. You led companies that generated over $100 million of new revenue growth. You also met your wife during this time, so you really, you had a book, and you had advocacy born from your initial experiences with surviving cancer. You've got experiences worthy of talking about and learning from in your second life, between cancers.
I do. So I have to tell you that I don't judge, cancer diagnosis is complex, and it was analog times. So learning things were paced a little slower than they are today. And I had people that were helping me along the way. But really I had to take it on my own initiative as an entrepreneur, as a self-starter, to work on myself. And this was not an overnight thing. It took time. So I'm in California. It's 1991. Now, I have to tell you, in retrospect, I got sick fast and I got better fast. It was really not this long 10-year journey. It is, and I call it a miracle, and you called me a miracle. Miracle number one is my sister. Her bone marrow being an exact match saved my life without question. So that is a miracle that gave me my life back. And so I actually had to make the best of it. And so I did. I worked hard at my stamina. I worked hard at living healthy and getting back up. And I will tell you that reacclimating into the workforce was really hard. It was hard because it moves without you. All right. And then slowly but surely, my hair grew back. People didn't know I was a cancer patient unless I told them. Right. And so my career was getting back on track. I was getting into a rhythm. And my friend says, go to, check out this young leadership group at the Jewish Federation. And I did. And it's who you surround yourself with. And I started to go, and I enjoyed the topics and the people. They were all young working professionals that were also interested in making the world a better place. And I actually felt at home there because I had done charity work. My mom had always done charity work. And I really enjoyed it. And there were some really young, good looking women there as well. That was a big bonus factor. And I saw what?
Plus.
Yeah. So I actually met Lisa, there, and it was a beautiful love story because I met her, and we met at this retreat. We had a lot of common values, and she was really a beautiful soul because her work was all about children, youth, and families, from legislation, federally and nationally, and also locally in Los Angeles. And our hearts met, and we called it Besheret. Besheret in Judaism is the word for you met your match. And so we were a match, and we started this beautiful love story, got married, and she really pushed me towards even greater service in the community.
So you're talking about this beautiful woman that you met through your experiences volunteering, and being an active part of the Jewish community. Is this prior to your adventures with Silicon Valley?
Yeah, so just I ended up when I was still working for the large computer company, and then they got bought out by AT&T, and it became not a pleasant place to work. I took early retirement at age 26, and I went to my first startup, and it was in the broadcast television business. And so the change from analog to digital was happening, and I got very fortunate to participate in growing, a large sales and business unit, and it was really exciting. It was a very cool thing to sell broadcast television equipment to television stations and the television networks, and travel to Alaska and Hawaii that all have TV stations and cable companies, and it was a blast. And I was making great money and enjoying the work, and still able to do the volunteerism. But Lisa was the lead for that. But she was working too for children, the Department of Children and Families in LA. And we started our life together. and we moved into her apartment. Then we bought a house together in Pacific Palisades, which was absolutely beautiful. And things are great. And she's an older woman. I was 27 and she was 32. We got married at Shutters on the beach overlooking the Pacific. We had 120 people come because there was an earthquake, so some people didn't want to come. Beautiful, beautiful wedding. It was such a beautiful romance, and it
like a
was amazing.
storybook.
Yeah, we in my book we call it the Hollywood wedding and Hollywood romance. It was really, really was. And then a decision comes is that I get recruited to move up to Silicon Valley, and she did not want to leave LA. We had great friends, a great life in LA. I convinced her to come up, and eventually then she did join me in LA. We gave up our beautiful house. We moved into a small, tiny house in Menlo Park, near Sand Hill Road, where all the venture capital is. And she grew to love San Francisco because she got involved in the Jewish community. She again was leading the young leadership stuff, and I would come to help clean up, and then I got involved raising money. And she loved wine country. We love Monterey, and she then tells me that I'm working too much, and I was. I was, even though Humpty Dumpty 1.0 should have learned a lesson. You just get caught up in this vortex of Silicon Valley because everybody is sprinting. And I even say in my book, 2 + 2 = 200, the new math. It didn't make sense, but it was the time. This is, the late 90s and stuff. So I'm traveling around, which she sits me down and says, listen, do we want to actually have a family? And you got to start to be home. And it made sense. So miracle number 2 is we called for that sperm sample.
Mm-hmm.
11 years later, through in vitro fertilization, a process called ICSI, we actually got to actually have a daughter. And it's a big process and it's expensive. But think about that time back 11 years prior when my liver function was too high and I didn't do chemo. Because if I would have done chemo, I would have been sterile. We would have actually had to look towards adoption or surrogacy or other things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or a sperm
Mm-hmm.
donation. I got the blessing of having a healthy baby girl. So we actually call her our miracle girl and our frozen kidsicle. Emily Lauren Brown was born August 20th of 2001. I mean, how blessed is that?
Yeah. Almost just one of those things that you look back on and say, wow, that happened just like it was supposed to.
Well, I don't know, because Dr. Rubin didn't know. I mean, he sent me to the cryogenic center. Was that God talking to him? Was that a vision, or was it good doctoring, or was he just, sending me on a field trip because he wanted to change, the environment for me? All of that doesn't matter. Okay. The fact is that frozen sperm became my beautiful daughter, Emily.
Right.
Our daughter. So it was just amazing. And so we're living the Silicon Valley life. And I get to take some companies to go public and make a ton of money and use that to help other people through philanthropy, but also buy a big house, which is not easy to do in Los Altos, California. And then I get this telephone call. Okay. And if you want to dig more into Silicon Valley, I can, but I got this phone call from my twin sister that says, I'm moving to Michigan. Well, what I didn't tell you is that Lisa's from Michigan. And it hit me like so strong that Emily needs to grow up with family. We're alone out in California. It's expensive out here. Mm-hmm. Okay. And at that time, I'd started my own platform. So I could work anywhere. I didn't have to be in Silicon Valley. And I approached Lisa, and she loved San Francisco. She did not want to move back to Michigan, although for family reasons she did. Her parents were there some of the time as well. And her stepsister and half brothers were there. And my parents could come out there a lot easier than getting to California. I convinced her, and we went on a house hunting trip. It snowed in April. And in 2005, we actually moved from Silicon Valley here. And my sister moved at the same July of 2005. We moved at the same time. And it was beautiful that the kids grew up together, and Emily got to know her cousins and her grandparents and family, because that, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about.
Yeah,
and
seems
so
like a great decision.
It was, and we've been here 18 years now in Michigan. So did you want to touch base back in the feeling of Silicon Valley, or continue
No,
on?
I appreciate you sharing that. I think it's important to one of the things that we talked about as we transition into life number three, when we talked earlier, Howard, you talked about us in some of your training that you do now, that you have a message that you, I think, delivered very recently, that you're not a patient,
Sure.
that you're much more than a patient. And
Yeah.
that your second life, I appreciate you going there with us. I think that's very emblematic uh, of that uh, principle, and also seems to be foundational perhaps to that that focus being so important to you now, considering that you at age 50 go in for a colonoscopy. I did the same thing at age 50.
Right.
I had a polyp that, of course, it was snipped, and it was benign. However, I was asked to come back in 3 years, so an early schedule, and when I came back in 3 years, I was given I guess, would call the green light. Hey, you're good. I know I took some steps. I took it very seriously. Increased my level of exercise, ate more fiber. I hope that played a role in where I am now. So I'm back on a 5-year schedule. You had a far different experience at age 50. You
Right.
go in and you do that, and you learn you have stage 4 cancer for a second time. This time it's advanced metastatic colon cancer. And once again, you're told that you probably shouldn't expect to survive it. Uh, so what I mean, I can't even imagine, where do you begin? What is, and yet here you are, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but take us through that, Howard at age 50 to now a healthy Howard. How is that even possible?
So it's being blessed, being grateful, and being lucky. As I say, I look in the mirror every day and say that. Um, the I am here because of miracle number three, okay, which we'll get to. And either that, or if you believe in God, God has a plan for me, and that my cancer burden got taken care of. Where many people, that their cancer burden is too great, and God calls them to heaven. And so it's hard to explain that, but positive attitude, huge resilience, huge mental toughness. I kind of already started to build that up from cancer number one. So, all right, so we moved to Michigan, and we're here in 2005, and my daughter's growing up. She was 4. My sister has twins, girl boy twins, and they're 4, and my niece is 6. My Lisa's half sister Beth has 2 boys. They're 4 and 6. Kids know each other. They're growing up. It's a beautiful thing. We able to buy a nice house here in the suburbs of Detroit, and life is continuing. I find my basketball guys. I'm doing where Lisa and I are accelerated into leadership positions in the Jewish community here. My startup, Planet Jewish and Circle Builder, are running, and I'm busy, and life is good. Really, life was good. Also, I was only about 40 minutes from my twin sister, which I really liked and appreciated,
Mm-hmm.
because my twin sister is not only, saved my life, she's my wife's best friend and my best friend. She's an angel on this earth. Um,
Beautiful. Hey,
and
by the way, where during this time, where did you keep that bag of love?
Oh, I keep it with me. The
Did
bag of
you
love
did,
is with me. Yeah, I keep it with me. It's in my top corner of my desk here. I look at it all the time. I touch it. I bring it to my heart. No, I keep it with me. Now, I don't
Mhm.
usually travel with it, but I keep it with me. Yeah, absolutely. This is a symbol of love and life. So yeah, it
And is
means a lot to
and
me.
is that true? Had that been true throughout your life up to that point? Before learning about the second diagnosis, that you kept it with you all the time.
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
asking.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I keep it with me all the time. Yeah.
Gotcha.
This is my, I don't have many pictures of me enduring cancer one, very few. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
want my picture taken. Plus also we were looking with, film cameras. We didn't have digital cameras. We had film cameras. So I didn't want my picture taken. There's very few pictures of me,
Mm-hmm.
with cancer, one. But this is my, like you carry a rope, like a rock that says hope on it, which I actually do carry. You wear a bracelet or you wear something, some people wear a cross or they wear a chai, meaning life. This is basically my symbol, my remembrance and the thing that I hold dearly, because that's why I'm here. This bag is why I actually got my life back again. And so it means a great deal to me. And so it's like a wedding ring or anything like that. It's a symbol to me that gave me life. So I carry it with me and look at it, mostly every day.
Now, now you're carrying it into this second diagnosis.
Sure. So I had my colonoscopy. I'm an athlete. I didn't really have many symptoms. So let me take a break here for a second and just say that your cancer screening is how most cancer screening should turn out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Get a polyp snipped, come back in 3, 5, or 8 years. That's the majority of the time. But the screening age is 50. Now it's 45 because younger people are getting colorectal cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And this year alone, 155,000 people will be diagnosed with colorectal cancer. 52,000 of those people will die. Okay. It's a second leading cancer, and it's a second leading cause of death outside of lung cancer. So it's very serious. So
Yeah.
to things that we didn't do during COVID, which was go to the doctor, okay, or go get screened for your mammogram or for your prostate or for your you can actually do a poop test with Cologuard or a FIT test, or the gold standard is a colonoscopy. Go get your cardio checked and a stress test for your arteries. Go to the dentist. If you're not at optimal health, you can't function to your best you. And
Mm-hmm.
so part of self-love and self-care is your health. And so, which I understand first and foremost. And so I really do stress people to do that. And unfortunately, people in the African-American community, Latino community, indigenous communities, poor communities don't go get tested.
Mm-hmm.
And they are the highest incident of colorectal cancer. And so I will just stress everyone to go get screened.
Mm-hmm.
Go to the dentist, because it's, I'm dealing with a lot of problems with my teeth and implants now because of chemotherapy and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So I basically go schedule my colonoscopy. It's June 4th of 2016. And Lisa, you have to have a driver. I wake up in the recovery room with Lisa holding my hand. And the gastroenterologist, I know him from the Jewish community. And I say, Dr. Phil, everything's good, right? And he looks at me with just serious eyes, and he's got a mask on. And he says, no, I found something. And when I find something, and he called it the cecum, I now know it's the connection point between your large and small intestine. And he says, when I find something, I take a piece of it, I mark it, and we're going to send it up for pathology. He goes, I also snipped a few polyps, and we're going to test those. Well, very quickly, they actually went through an accelerated pathology. I think by the next Tuesday, I learned that I had stage 3 colon cancer. I had an 8.5 centimeter tumor in my cecum. And I actually had my niece was graduating high school. My parents were out here when they all heard the news that weekend. And lightning struck again. I mean, I had cancer for a second time. Now, people now talk about Roundup and getting other cancers from chemicals and stuff like that. And my doctor's like, did you cut lawns and use Roundup? I said, yeah. He goes, how many of your other friends did? Everyone. Did they get lymphoma? No. Did they get colon cancer? No. They said, the reason that you got cancer, and again, most people don't know, but it can be from diet and it can be from hereditary. Mine is neither. Mine was because of my body didn't create an enzyme to control the polyp growth. Now, if I would have been screened at 40, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. I might not have had colon cancer. I would have had an early stage.
Yeah.
Stage 1, maybe. If I got
Yeah.
screened at 42, it took 10 years for this tumor to grow to 8.5 centimeters. Okay. So I did an immediate, 10 days later, I did an immediate, what's called a hemicolectomy, or called a colon resection. The men have 6 to 8 feet of colon, like a rubber band. Women have 4 to 6 feet of colon. It's very stretchy. And they cut out with margin the tumor and lymph nodes, and they test those lymph nodes, and one was positive. That's a bad sign, actually. And they installed a chemotherapy port so they didn't have to use my veins. And I waited a couple of weeks. I went to the national championships for soccer with my daughter. And in early August, I started chemotherapy. Mm. And I was back in the chair watching it drip. And the chemotherapy in the chair was 7 hours, slow drip chemotherapy. So I'm reintroduced to the infusion nurses. You know, Lisa is now my primary caregiver, trying to keep track of records and appointments and medicines and side effects. My mom comes out and helps when she can. My sister is close by and helps when she can. But we're living in the digital age. So I have a decision to whether to share my diagnosis. Many people like to keep it private, and I totally respect that. I decided to share my diagnosis because I have such a big network. Now, I'm not sharing every gory detail, but I'm sharing what's going on. And that's Facebook. Okay. Could be LinkedIn, not as much, but that's text messaging. That's instant messaging. You know, this isn't a pager, you know, back in the analog days. This is digital. And so people are checking in and trying to show their support. And I had others that went silent on me for their reasons. They couldn't deal with it. They had other things to deal with their life. But this is what happens when you're dealing with the fragile, emotional, you know, physical, financial, and relationships in this world that we did, the journey called life. So I was actually more prepared now this time. Okay. Mm-hmm. I did allow walk myself in darkness. I did get angry. I did actually, was upset because there was more at stake. I had a daughter that I didn't know if I was going to see graduate high school. I was married 22 years. All right. There was more at stake for me. And I was actually already a veteran of cancer. I had been to the front lines and made it through. Right. So I had a different perspective. So I knew that I had to learn as much about this disease to become educated so that I could collaborate, connect, and communicate with my cancer team. Mm-hmm. And I called my old doctors from Cancer One, even though they weren't colorectal cancer doctors, to find out their expertise and to be able to bring them into the equation. I needed to build my army and my network to be able to make the best decisions at the time. And chemotherapy hadn't changed in 30, and at that time it was 26 years. It's the same horrible stuff. It's basically that pumping that poison to see if it can actually kill the cancer cells, right? Mm. So cancers, I actually define cancer as baking a bad batch of brownies, and the body continues to build that. It's called mismatch repair. The body just doesn't recognize that you're building these bad cells. In blood cancer, it's the white cells that are the fighters versus the red cells and the platelets that are actually healing. This in solid tumor cancer, you want to stop that progression. Okay, so you're in the chemo chair and you're with other people now, okay, that are going through cancer and getting chemotherapy, right? And I had already done this. I had already been through this. Doesn't make it any easier. Mm-hmm. But when I was able to look for resources online to learn about this and to get with my people that had been through it or going through the battle, I found Colon Town. I found other cancer research called the Colon Cancer Coalition that does screening. And I found the Colorectal Cancer Alliance, and I found Fight CRC. And I basically went into Colon Town and I learned from people.
Colon Town is
it's a 501c3 nonprofit, basically, that is now 10,000 colorectal cancer patients and caregivers and families once you get diagnosed.
Mm-hmm.
You enter a private online network of 125 private Facebook groups to meet you where you're at in the disease, whether it's early stage, late stage, whether it's you're a caregiver, and again, it's this learning network to help you and walk alongside of you. I didn't have that. I had a support group that I was in at Dana-Farber, which was a face-to-face support group called Stepping Stones, how to build your life up again. And quite frankly, it wasn't for me because it was very negative. I actually went there a few times with my mom, and then I decided not to continue with it. This support group was people walking alongside of you, meeting you where you're at, whether that you were a deer in the headlights or you were actually someone that wanted to consume as much information about the science and about the future, being on the front lines of colon cancer. And I was
Which
one
is
of the
where
guys
you were at the time.
correct. And the fact is that although we were actually understanding that people were dying around us, people were living. They were living in treatment. They were living with what's called no evidence of disease. There were people success stories that I actually got to gleam onto and talk to. And I
How
call this,
important was that?
oh my God, it was the lifeline called cancer whispering that I labeled it. They were cancer whispering to me and giving me guidance and actually giving me the questions to ask my care team. And they were offering me helpful things of how to deal with the side effects, how to deal emotionally, physically, and how to deal with negativity and all that, because they were giving their shared lived experience. It was powerful.
And you took their advice and counsel very seriously.
Yeah, because I wanted to get where they were. I wanted to get to either a patient that was living on treatment or a patient that could actually living with regression or a patient that could get, the goal was to get to no evidence of disease. And why? Because I wanted to see my daughter graduate high school.
Yeah.
It was
Great
not,
North
it was
Star.
not guaranteed. It was not a guarantee.
I remember you telling me in an earlier conversation that you made a decision to remove as much negativity as you could from your life.
Correct. And that's a discipline.
Was that so you're making changes as as led by folks who have been there and done that and are doing it and have been successful. Now you're one of those people,
Right.
yourself, or more so, I should say, than especially in this arena. It was a pretty hard won path to get here. That your advocacy led you. Am I remembering this correctly? Your advocacy led you to be aware of an experimental surgery technique.
I learned about that in Town. So I have to tell you that the reason that things got bleak is that things weren't working. I failed the first 12 cycles of chemo. What I got was a lot of side effects. I got chemo brain, which is PTSD. I got stage 3 peripheral neuropathy, which is burning and numbness of the hands and the fingers and the feet and the toes. We've actually solved that because putting an ice cap on your head and your mittens and booties on help relieve that. And we learned that through Town. It's beautiful innovation from patients to the medical community. But I didn't have that. I was failing the surgeries. I had a second colon resection. And then I had to make a decision to do more salvage chemo, Hail Mary chemo, or to do a clinical trial. Well, I actually weighed the evidence, talked to my care team, and I did a clinical trial. Well, I failed that clinical trial. So a year from being diagnosed stage 3 colon cancer, the cancer spread to my liver, to my stomach lining called peritoneum and omentum, and to my bowel. When it spreads and you become metastatic, and you actually Dr. Google that, 4% chance of living 6 to 8 months, 4% chance of living and again, that's a range, and the data, no one knows your number, but you're faced with your mortality. Your life clock is shortened, right? And you're still dealing with some harsh treatments. So I did learn about this treatment called it's called CRS HIPEC, cytoreduction hyperintrapreneural chemotherapy. So I went through a surgery in March of 18. Okay. After failing everything else. Okay. They cut me from chest to pelvic bone, and they went in with microscopic glasses. A surgical oncologist removed dead and live cancer cells that they could see, shave my liver, remove my gallbladder, remove my peritoneal momentum, cut a ton of my bowel out, and then pour hot chemotherapy to kill microcell cancer. It's fairly controversial, okay? But it's supposed to give you life extension from 2 months to 2 years with a 30% chance of success. But that's better than zero.
Better than 4 or 0, right?
Better than zero, 4%.
Wow.
Massive 13-hour surgery. My job was to wake up in the ICU and press the morphine drip button with 90 staples from chest to pelvis.
Insane. Once again, had to be terrifying.
You don't have a choice. You're dealt the hand that you have to play out. It was absolutely terrifying. But the fact that I had been through cancer before helped me because my mental toughness was at an all-time high. I was a Marine on a mission. I was a cancer patient that had to see his daughter graduate high school, even though that it was stacked against me. Now, I want to get back to what you said about negativity. One of the things that I had to do was I had to be focused. All right. And the advice I give to anyone diagnosed with cancer now, and I do a lot of cancer whispering, okay, is it's your time to be selfish. And the number one thing that you can't do, okay, don't be selfish. The number two thing is don't isolate. And I certainly did not isolate. Isolation breeds depression. It breeds anxiety. Could breed addiction, alcoholism, anger. It can breed a lot of bad stuff. You need to actually go ask and accept help. And so I was learning those lessons. And the lesson that they told me is that there's wars, there's shootings all the time, and there's friction in relationships. And you have to take that out in order to heal. Okay. You have to be able to sleep. Sleeping is healing. You have to be able to hydrate. You have to be able to eat. You have to be able to get enough activity. But bringing all that other mishigas, which is a Jewish word for called craziness, doesn't heal. It doesn't help. So if you can be disciplined with that mental toughness to be able to eliminate that. Now, what happens is that you can eliminate watching TV. You can eliminate talking about stuff, but you don't have to bury your head in the sand. You can be aware of what's going on in the world, and it's always not pleasant. There's a war going on in the Middle East. There's a war going on in the Ukraine. We still have school shootings and bad stuff happening around there, but also personal connection negativity. Okay. I had to be able, there's people that left me, and there's people that I actually had to leave, including certain family members that I had to just minimize my involvement with them because it wasn't helpful. The mission was to see my daughter graduate high school and to get to some type of stability in cancer. And that takes a lot of energy just to get out of bed each day. Thank God the dog needed to go walking, right? And I'm a pretty self-motivated guy. But when you're loaded up on steroids and you're puking your guts out or you're living in the bathroom, okay, it's not as easy to be able to say that just to get out of bed every day. And some days I didn't. But many days when I didn't want to, I did and took a step forward And boy, was I getting a lot of encouragement and a lot of support to do that. And Lisa was taking care of all the life, the bills, the appointments, the medicines, Emily to school, Emily to soccer. I mean, if I didn't have her, how do you get through? So again, caregivers, there's 3.5 million unpaid caregivers that are taking care of elderly and kids and sick people. They're angels on this earth because I don't know how you do it alone. I wouldn't have got through. Again, if you don't have a caregiver, one can be provided for you. And so that's when you seek that help. And so many people came to my aid, and I really learned a lot from this, but I had it to heal again. Now I had experience healing, the first time in Los Angeles, but I'm healing now, and I'm a dad and I'm married, and it's still very long journey. I have scar tissue. They couldn't tell me if I was no evidence of disease yet. I'm on maintenance chemo. I'm still on tons of medications and blood thinners. I'm still getting surveillance every quarter. But I was also immersed in Colon Town. I joined the board of directors. I wanted to help others. I'm screaming at the top of my lungs to go get screened. So you don't have to actually go through chemo, surgery, radiation, ablation, which is basically burning it out. I don't wish that on anyone. So go get screened. And what I do is I actually carry a piece of blue with me. And this is really important about intentionality and being authentic you, is that I wear a pin on my suit lapel. It's blue. Blue is the colon cancer. Every cancer has a color. I'm wearing blue today. I usually have something blue near me, okay, at all times. And I wear blue sneakers when I speak on stage. And what that means is that one is to go get screened. It's my reminder to tell everyone to go get screened. Number two, it's honoring those that are still in treatment, cancer treatment, not just colon cancer. I want to make sure that they are recognized because I've been there. I know that the journey is complex, it is emotional, it is difficult for you and for your families. I want to make sure that I am intentionally recognizing the people that are struggling and going through cancer or any type of debilitating thing. It could be alcoholism, it could be another illness. I don't care what it is. Okay. I call it cancer. And then the next thing is that I know that this disease called cancer kills people every single day, and I want to honor their memory. Okay. You don't even get 140 characters on a tombstone, but there's a lot of people in the cancer world that were my cancer whisperers that taught me and guided me through that are now dead. And I do not want to forget their memory and what they taught me and what they shared with me, because they were heroic in their time, and they took their time to help me get through. And so it is my obligation to actually call their memory. And so that I tell everybody, and that's the intentionality that you bring to the table, okay? And that's how I share my light. And others can too.
That's exactly what I want to say. It's your obligation to shine brightly. And I know that your passion it's palpable, and it's inspiring. You are shining brightly. You have shone brightly. You tell us about shining brightly as a concept and as a book, of course.
I'll start with the book, and then we'll go to the movement. Okay, because it's not a concept; it's a complete movement now, and I'm building, and it's really great. So I meet a friend of mine that the religion editor of the Free Press, who's now a book publisher, a guy named David Crum. And we go for bagel and coffee. I figure, we meet. He's there to say goodbye to me. He heard that I'm going to die. He wanted to just basically share space with me for a bagel and coffee. Mm-hmm. And we get to talking, and he says to me, would you like to leave a legacy to Emily and Lisa and to the world and write a short 100-page little Kindle ebook or something? I was like, no. I said, it's daunting to me. I'm not a good writer. I don't believe I could do that. And he says, well, go home and ask Lisa and Emily and, think about it. But I did tell you that I go to the bathroom a lot as a colorectal cancer patient. So I make one of my several trips to the bathroom during coffee and bagel. And actually the meeting wasn't a half hour. It turned out to be about 2 hours. And Silicon Valley style, he writes on a napkin 10 kind of concepts of what during our conversation. And he said, we have the basis for a book here on a napkin. Mm-hmm. Remember, in Silicon Valley, you write an idea on a napkin and go start a company and write a business plan. So I resonated with that.
That's your style right there.
Exactly. So he has that napkin, by the way. I didn't take it. He kept it. And I went home and I told Lisa, David wants to write a book with me. Emily, they laughed at me. You write a book, you go, your punctuation and spelling aren't very good. You bullet point everything. I know. I go, I'm going to tell David no. I said, and then all of a sudden I slept on it. And I don't know about you, but I actually sleep with a pad of paper and a pencil or a pen next to my bed because I wake up to go to the bathroom and I have an idea and I write it down. I don't know if anybody else does that. I think some people do.
Absolutely.
I wrote, because remember, we're actually, I'm still kind of immune compromised and all that. So I'm not seeing many people. And this is right before COVID. Okay. But I basically say, you know what? I can speak my book. So I wrote Speak My Book. So I called David, and Zoom had started a little bit, and we had Skype and we have FaceTime and we had all that. I said, David, I said, I have one request. And he said, well, most authors have like 20. I go, I have one, only one. He goes, oh, well, this will be easy. I said, if you allow me to speak my book, interview the most influential people in my life, like family, friends, camp counselors, doctors, mentors, business leaders, and we can teach and write a book about, a life guide, okay, that people can relate to from their own families through my life experience, including cancer. So I said, I'll write a book with you. I heard dead silence for minutes on the phone. He's like, we've never done anything like that. And he said to me, I got to call you back. He calls me back a day or two later and he says, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to write this book, but we have to be extremely disciplined to be able to meet every Wednesday for 2 hours. It goes, I'm going to rely on you to set the schedule of who you want to interview. He goes, it's going to take a year and we'll write a book. So we did what's called hybrid publishing, where I actually paid for half the publishing. They pay for half the publishing. We share some of the royalties. I get a higher percentage. And we started this journey together. It took 3 years in COVID. I have to tell you, to be able to walk back almost every step of my life was so healing and really cool. All right. So I couldn't do that with my grandparents or my great grandparents, but everyone else I got to actually reconnect with my first mentor, Mike Brennan, reconnect with the doctors from 34 years ago, reconnect with my camp counselors from when I was 12. It was really cool. I brought them on. We recorded every session. We've got a lot of B-roll, and those recordings became transcripts. The transcripts become drafts. The drafts become chapters, and then everything has to be edited so it's readable. Okay. And we did it 3 years. I think we missed 2 Wednesdays. It was incredible how it came together. It was hard work. There's 901 steps to actually produce a book. It's work.
It sounds like the journey of creating it has surpassed your expectations and represents a reward in and of itself, regardless of what it's doing now. What the book, obviously, I think it's pretty recent, right? I mean,
so it just had its year birthday. Okay. So I got to press the green light on Amazon on September 27th of last year and go on this year-long book tour and publication. You never stop publicizing your book. What I realized is that all that effort and the 3 years to publish the book, I am now a best-selling published author. I love it.
Congratulations.
Okay. It's amazing feeling. And to put your word and work out in the world, books don't sell themselves. I realized that I actually had to put my entrepreneurial hat and my marketing hat on and go amplify this book if I wanted people to be aware of it. And so I've now started that journey to be able to do that. Okay. And here's the book is not a normal book in the what you would actually say that the author is speaking to the reader. I am not doing that. I am inviting you into those Zoom rooms. You get to be an observer in the Zoom rooms where my family is fighting over if we remembered which grandma's brisket is better than the other's grandma brisket. Normal family stuff that you had with your family. You can relate to it. Going on a family trip and things going completely haywire, right? Or things going beautifully. And what we do, and at the end of every chapter, I actually give homework. I tell people what they should I give them a call to action with different websites and links that I care about that they should know about. And I actually challenge them to shine brightly in some way after each chapter. And so this is a life guide book, a book to live a resilient life. And it starts with my grandmother talking about kindness and giving and healing, and it ends with hope. And in between are a lot of cool stories in my life from Silicon Valley, from my happy place called basketball. Everyone should have a happy place because that's your stress-free zone. From my love life and meeting the love of my life, Lisa, from the miracle girl, Emily, from mentorship is leadership. This book is cool. And I start with a chorus of praise. I reached out and so most books have 10 or 12 endorsements. I had 100. I cut it down to 65 because some were repetitive. My book starts with a chorus of praise in each phase of my life from people that impacted me. And I wanted them in the book to share their wisdom. And then we start with my grandmother and our family beginnings, my grandfather, okay, and then my original mentor, my dad, and my work mentors, and me becoming a Jewish big brother, and then cancer one. And so this book, okay, is really broken up, and you don't have to read it all in once, but it's a quick read. And again, for a new author, selling 1,500 copies in a year is actually, everyone's telling me, oh my God, that's huge. Well, they didn't sell themselves. I sell from stage. I sell them to everything on when I'm on podcasts. Your listeners might want to pick up the book on Amazon or the Kindle, or contact me for multiple books. And I sign everyone. I do a book plate, and I sign them if the people call me. And a book plate looks like this. It's a sticker because there's no more real book signings. I sign this with a personal note, and they stick it on their book. And so that's the exciting part of the book. And the book really now changed the trajectory of my life, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So now I'm saying, okay, I actually want to build a movement so that we can actually lift up others. The world's a tough place. So that's what a survivorship coach is. So I'm the only survivorship coach that I know about in the world, but I'm a life coach. I'm a mentorship coach. I can help people from getting out of bed to actually talking to your kids to job loss. It doesn't matter. It could be a small speed bump or a big speed bump, right? Because we all get knocked down in life and in business and in health and in relationships. I'm not a psychotherapist. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a dentist. Okay. But I can, from lived experience, give you the breadcrumbs to get back up again. Okay. From severe health to something not as severe, such as, a job loss or something like that, or somewhere where you want to do life improvement. And so shining brightly actually allows you to build that emotional well-being, physical well-being, financial well-being, and relationship well-being, all the cores in your life wheel. And I ask people to join me to share their light, to go help others. Because the big lesson I learned from 2 big cancers is it's not what you actually get in this world, it's what you give. And if you can lift yourself up and then lift up others, okay, then we shine brightly. Think about the thousands of people that helped me during cancer these last 7 years. They allowed them to share their light with me. And do you think that lifted me up? Absolutely, right. It did. And so I want people to be able to share their light with others, okay, to become a force multiplier for good and positive change. And if we each do that and incorporate that into our discipline and into our intentionality and authenticity, you'll see the change move. And again, I'm not Pollyanna. I know there's bad stuff happening every day, and there's a major war and major bad things happening. But that's what I try to do each day.
That's a great segue, Howard, because I think you're already touching on this last question I have for you. By the way, we're going to make sure all of Howard's contact information is in the description of this episode, wherever you're watching or listening to it. To wrap things up, Howard, you've been so generous with your time, and not just the time itself, but how you spent it. We talked before we started recording about our intention to take advantage of the opportunity that we have right now to create something of value. And you have gone places with us and been very present for us. And I can't thank you enough. I'd love to wrap things up here by asking you, and like I said, you have already started to talk about this. Howard, the places you've been, you're inside and outside. What is your advice? What is your best advice for somebody, somebody listening to this or watching this episode is has received news recently that is painful, unwelcome, uh, even perhaps threatening their sense of self and their expectations that they have for their life. Um, what what do you say to that person uh, uh, sitting in that space right now?
So I actually have a guide on my website. I have a guide on survivorship, a guide on mentorship and leadership, and a guide on interfaith, knowing the other. And the survivorship guide starts about that you actually have to still love yourself unconditionally. Okay. You're okay. And you had asked the question that before, and I didn't fully answer it, is that I don't consider myself a patient, although I am labeled that, just like someone's labeled a lawyer or a doctor. I am a human. I am a son. I am a brother, a twin brother. I am a husband. I am a dad. I am a friend. Okay. That's who I actually am. Okay. I am going through cancer and labeled a patient. Okay. But that's not how I define myself. And so I want people to self-love is the most important thing when you get this type of news. The second thing is to not to isolate and live in that darkness. Okay. The other thing is to go get help, then go educate yourself, be your own best advocate. I went and got help at Town and all these other resources, and people were willing to help me. But people sent me a joke, people checked in on me. All that added up to my positive mental toughness to get through this.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And I'm not saying I was positive all the time. I was angry. I was on steroids. I had a lot of downtime. And so I expressed and learned gratitude. I learned actually how to accept help. I will tell you that the younger me had a hard time accepting help when I was 23. And I now matured to understand that I can accept help. And I did that, right? People started to GoFundMe to help me with medical bills so I wouldn't have to worry about that. I resisted that. But I learned that people are there to help. And so the advice that I give to people is to be able to get through that day. But if you don't have help, help can be provided for you. I get called all the time. Someone has cancer and it's a different cancer than colon cancer. I can still help them. I am connected in the whole cancer world. I know how to get the resources to get them a cancer mentor, or to get them a nurse navigator, or get them a social worker, or get them a second opinion. And I know people who can do that. So I can do it probably faster than they can do that. And so ask for that help is really, really important. Get a caregiver, get people and surround yourself with positive people that are helping lift you up, right? And so some of this actually takes a little bit of work, but people can assist you in doing so. And I'm not going to tell you it's easy, right? To put Humpty Dumpty back together again, as you were my third life, I'm still going through the building process. I'm still a ball of clay. Not everything's 100%. Now people look at me and are like, oh my God, Howard, you're healthy. Well, they have no idea of the indivisible disabilities that I'm facing. And we spoke of them: chemo brain, PTSD, neuropathy, digestive problems, bathroom problems. There's people don't know until they actually take a look inside you and walk in your steps a little bit. So I say, be empathetic, walk in their steps, walk alongside them, and you'll learn. Be caring. I mean, these are things that are manners and politeness that we can do. And then one last thing I want to add that's really important. When you're actually suffering, okay, in a tight spot, whether it's severe or less severe, I actually take two things, actually. One, find your happy place. Go to that stress-free place. It could be yoga, cooking, travel, music. Mine is basketball. Find it and go there a little bit. That stress-free place is really helpful. The second thing is that what you have to do, I'm going through a chemo brain moment for a second here. You have to take the spotlight off yourself. Go help someone else. Go take yourself outside of your situation and go help another. The endorphins, and it actually helps you. It might help you figure something out, because when you come back to then, oh, me, and I'm in that dark space. So that's something that I counsel and help in the survivorship coaching. Did you go help someone else? Go do a random act of kindness and buy someone behind you a cup of coffee. Call someone and let them know that you care about them. Okay? And look in the mirror and say what you're blessed and grateful for. There's got to be something. You got to find something, or else the world's very dark. And my book uses the biblical references to darkness and light. And on my book cover is, they actually wanted to use a phoenix, because I rose from the phoenix. The phoenix is a quite ugly bird. I didn't really love that. This is actually a dove. And that light bulb, and I helped design the cover with a world famous artist. That light bulb is illuminating my energy through shining brightly for peace, love, and hope. That's what I want to illuminate. And it doesn't happen every day. Some days are dimmer than most, but it happens most days. And that's my advice.
I love it. And the added weight that it carries, you know, Howard, I can't express enough thanks for having you here. As I mentioned, I do want to remind folks that let's continue the conversation. Let's continue to learn about manifesting our lives more in line with how we desire, especially with the big stuff, whether we're facing, major disappointment or temporary inconvenience. The parts of our lives that are most important, I invite everyone to make sure that you start by joining my Facebook group. It's called Manifest the Big Stuff with Greg Kuhn, Creating Our Realities Together. The link is going to be in the description here. There, you're going to receive every month exclusive content from me that's available nowhere else. And like I said, we can continue this journey together. And, Howard, you have now become an important part of that journey for my viewers, my wonderful listeners and viewers who are on spiritual journeys themselves, as we all are. And I can't thank you enough for giving us everything you have. It means so much that you have shared your time here, just like everybody who's watching. You
Can I
sharing
give
your time.
I want to give a final statement to you, Greg. So
Please.
I'm putting on my glasses, because
Yeah.
I actually want to shine the light back on you, for giving me this space, and for the gratitude of letting me share my lessons and my experience and my ability to shine my light. And so I want to shine it back to you for and be grateful for you to offer me this, and to shout out to Gail Kraft for introducing us. And so I want to end with this note, and then hand the back show for closure for you, is that if we can shine brightly a little bit each day for ourselves, for others in our communities, I guarantee you the world will be a better place.
Yeah. You know what? I operate on a simple maxim that if you can love someone, you should. Makes our lives better. And I have to say that, Howard, your light is bright and it is shining brightly. I so appreciate you laying down this very definitive wellspring of not just information, but inspiration, hope, and enlightenment. I don't know any other way to say it. So, yeah, hats off to you, Howard. And we look forward to seeing what you do as your path continues to unfold now in this third life. Thanks for sharing it with us today.
Grateful, and thank you.
All right. Take care, everybody. Until we get a chance to meet up again, I expect to see you in my Facebook group. That would be wonderful. But until we join up again on YouTube or your favorite podcast listening network. I hope you make the most of your time, and I will do likewise. Keep manifesting, my friends.